I never expected to be cut from my own sister's wedding, yet that's exactly what happened. We'd never been best friends, but we were still siblings. I thought there was an unspoken rule that family, at the very least, included each other on important days. She and I grew up in the same house, sharing parents who seemed to dote on her achievements more than mine, yet I still assumed I'd be at her side when she walked down the aisle. Instead, I found out she wanted a small, intimate affair, and I wasn't on the list. I learned the news from our mother. She casually mentioned that my sister was finalizing seating arrangements and had decided not to invite everyone in the family. When I pressed, she admitted I'd been excluded. I asked why, and she sighed and said something about tight numbers and how my sister was super stressed, but it still felt like a slap in the face. My sister invited distant cousins and a few of her coworkers, yet somehow cut me out. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Even if we weren't close, it stung to be cast aside like a nobody. I tried texting my sister to clarify. She sent back a short reply. "We don't have enough space, but I appreciate your understanding." I nearly choked on my frustration. I considered talking to her fiancé, Mason, whom I'd found friendly enough, but decided not to. If she was uninviting me, I wasn't about to beg for a seat. I told myself I'd move on. A few weeks later, I got a bizarre text from her asking if I could bake brownies for the dessert table. She wanted me to drop them off before the wedding and then leave. I couldn't believe her nerve. First, she cut me out. Then she wanted free desserts. I shot back that I was traveling that weekend. The next morning, I booked a vacation at an all-inclusive resort, determined to do something fun while she was busy throwing a party I couldn't attend. My parents tried to convince me to let it go. They said she was under a ton of pressure, that she didn't mean to insult me, and that it was simply a numbers game. I refused to let that excuse fly. If she wanted me there, she would have made it work. She chose not to. I told my parents I'd be out of town. That was that. On the day of the wedding, I was at a gorgeous resort, sipping a cold drink by the pool. I'd turned off my phone notifications, not wanting to see family photos or group texts. After dinner, I switched my phone back on out of curiosity. My screen exploded with missed calls and messages from practically everyone in my family, plus relatives I rarely heard from. It was absolute chaos. My mom had left frantic voicemails, my sister had texted me multiple times, my aunt and uncle had both tried to get in touch. It took me a second to figure out why. Turns out the wedding was a complete disaster. From what I gleaned, the caterer showed up woefully late with half the food missing. The guests were forced to wait, hungry and irritated. My sister's prized floral arrangements wilted early because someone stored them improperly. The wedding planner was having a meltdown, the DJ's equipment malfunctioned, and rumors started that the open bar was running out of drinks. My sister and Mason were apparently near tears, with guests complaining to everyone who would listen. My mom wrote in the group chat, "We need your help. Don't you have any contacts who can fix this? The music isn't working and the caterer is incompetent. Call us." I stared, dumbfounded. These people had made it clear I wasn't welcome, yet now they wanted me to swoop in. The group chat was full of messages begging for assistance, along with panicked updates on each new catastrophe. Even my sister wrote, "I know you're upset, but please, I need you right now. Remember that DJ friend you mentioned? Or could you at least help us find a solution? This is turning into a nightmare." The irony was so thick I could practically taste it. Less than a month ago, she'd told me there wasn't enough room for me at her wedding. Now she was begging for my resources. I was torn between fury and grim satisfaction. I could sense how desperate they were for damage control, but I wasn't going to derail my vacation to rescue them. I typed a quick reply in the family group chat. "Sorry for your troubles, but I'm on vacation. Good luck." Then I silenced my phone again, ignoring the subsequent pings and vibrations. If they wanted my help, maybe they should have included me in the first place. The next morning, I saw that the wedding had been even worse than I'd realized. The DJ never got his system fully operational, forcing guests to chat awkwardly during the reception. The food was cold by the time it was served. Uncle Steve, who's known for being picky, complained loudly enough to disrupt everything. My sister apparently looked like she was holding back tears the entire night. Guests left early, unimpressed and annoyed. My family was furious with everyone who might have stepped in to help and didn't. I flew home 2 days later, expecting to face some drama from my parents. Sure enough, I walked into my apartment and found them waiting. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed, and my father looked weary. They didn't explode at me the way I expected. Instead, Mom just demanded, "Why couldn't you help? Your sister's wedding was ruined." I reminded her that my sister had uninvited me. She had no right to demand my services. Mom tried to rationalize it, saying, "She's been under pressure. She made a mistake." But I was done shouldering blame for her choices. My father stepped in and asked if I could at least reach out and offer some words of comfort. I said, if she wants to talk, she knows where to find me. She's the one who excluded me in the first place. I stood my ground, refusing to let them twist this back onto me. They left eventually, disappointed. Later that week, my sister sent me an email. She accused me of being heartless and claimed I'd abandoned my family when they needed me most. She never acknowledged uninviting me or sending me that ridiculous brownie request. Instead, she acted like I'd chosen to skip her wedding out of spite. She ended by saying she hoped I'd learn something from this experience about family loyalty. I didn't reply. I didn't see the point. My only regret was that my parents were caught in the middle. They obviously felt torn, and I hated that they were upset, but I wasn't going to let that overshadow how I'd been treated. She wanted me to swoop in like a superhero after casting me aside. That wasn't happening. Weeks went by. Just when I thought things had settled, my mother told me my sister and Mason wanted to host a second reception to make up for the botched wedding. They planned to invite the same guests, plus anyone who couldn't attend before. When I heard that, I burst into laughter. Were they just going to pretend the first disaster never happened? My mom said, "They'd like you to come this time. Your sister wants to start fresh." The phrasing made me roll my eyes. Start fresh? So now that she realized I might be useful, she wanted to play nice? I asked, "Has she even apologized?" My mother, looking uncomfortable, said, "Not exactly, but she says she wants you there." Mason reached out to me privately. He admitted he'd gone along with my sister's decisions during the wedding planning, and he regretted it. He said, "We really should have invited you. I'm sorry for that. I hope you'll come to our second reception and help us show the family we can still celebrate." His tone was humble, which did soften me a bit, but I still resented how everything had played out. I told him I'd think about it. My sister never apologized to me directly. Instead, she sent a formal invitation in the mail with a short handwritten note. "I know things got messed up before. We'd love for you to join us this time." I stared at that note for a long time. She never mentioned her mistake or acknowledged the uninvite. She just wanted me to fall in line. I debated ignoring it entirely, but I decided to go. Not because I wanted to reconcile. I was still hurt and angry. I just needed to see for myself what she intended to do at this second party. I also knew that my parents would keep pestering me if I refused, so I accepted, but I didn't do it for her. The event was smaller, set at Mason's parents' property. They'd hired a new DJ and a new caterer. Everything was color coordinated, and staff bustled around making sure the buffet looked perfect. My mother greeted me at the entrance, relief visible on her face. She ushered me inside, clearly hoping this would bring everyone back together. I spotted my sister making small talk with some relatives. She wore a fitted cocktail dress, radiating that usual confidence, but I noticed she seemed a bit anxious. I lingered near the side, keeping myself busy with a plate of hors d'oeuvres. Eventually, she wandered over, giving me a tentative smile. I said, "Hello," in a neutral tone. She replied, "Thanks for coming. I'm glad you made it." I waited, half hoping she'd say, "I'm sorry for excluding you." But she didn't. She just sipped her drink, eyes darting around to see if anyone was listening. I asked, "So is this what you envisioned the first time?" She hesitated, then mumbled, "I'd rather not talk about the first time." Her dismissive response reignited my anger. I said, "Interesting. You had a lot to say when you were blaming me for not helping." Her face flushed. She glanced around again, probably worried someone might overhear. "That was heat of the moment," she said. "I was just upset." I pressed on. "You uninvited me, then expected me to fix everything." She set her drink down and gave me a pleading look. "I really don't want to fight right now." I stared at her, incredulous. She had spent weeks sending me hostile messages, and now she wanted to gloss over it. Mason approached, obviously sensing the tension. He put a hand on her shoulder and turned to me, saying, "I'm truly sorry about everything. I wish I could go back and change it." At least he was trying. I gave him a nod and said, "I appreciate that, but you know how I feel." My sister folded her arms, looking annoyed that he'd apologized on her behalf. I realized then that she likely expected me to be the bigger person, just like I always had been. This time, I wasn't in the mood. Throughout the party, relatives kept coming up to me, saying they were so glad I was there, that it felt like real family unity again. I forced polite smiles. In truth, I felt like an outsider. My sister floated through the crowd, chatting and laughing, pretending we were fine. A few times, I caught her eye and she looked away. No apology, no owning up to her actions. An hour later, when most people were dancing or eating dessert, I decided to leave. My mother intercepted me, asking, "Won't you stay a bit longer?" I said, "There's no point. She's not even acknowledging what she did. This is just another show." Mom looked distressed, but I didn't budge. I walked over to my sister, who was in the middle of a conversation with two of her bridesmaids from the original wedding. She hesitated when she saw me approach. I said, "I'm taking off." She frowned, glancing at my mother, who lingered nearby. "Why so soon?" she asked, as if trying to be polite. I told her, "I came here expecting some kind of apology or honest conversation. Instead, I got a new party where you pretend nothing ever happened. Enjoy the rest of your night." She opened her mouth to respond, but I was already turning away. I could feel the eyes of other guests on me. I caught Mason's gaze, and he gave me a helpless shrug. He clearly knew she was messing this up, but that was their dynamic, and I wasn't going to insert myself into it. My phone buzzed with texts from my dad as I headed to my car. He wanted to know if I'd come back inside, because people were wondering why I was leaving. I ignored it. On the drive home, I raged internally at her arrogance. She'd wanted me to show up just so she could say, "Look, we're all good." She never once took responsibility for the original Uninvite. Not once did she acknowledge the audacity of demanding my help when it all fell apart. Over the next few days, I received a flurry of calls from various relatives. Some said I overreacted. Others thought I was right to be upset. A handful had no idea I hadn't been invited to the wedding in the first place and were horrified. In every conversation, I maintained that I refused to accept blame for her fiasco. She created the crisis, then expected me to bail her out. I was done playing that game. Eventually, my father wanted to have a family meeting, but I declined. I said, "You can meet with her if you want, but I see no point in discussing this further. She made choices. She has to live with them." I refused to bend, and it felt strangely liberating. For years, I'd been the sibling who tried to keep the peace. Now, I was the sibling who said, "Enough." The next week, my sister sent me a single text. "I'm sorry you felt excluded. Let's move on." I laughed when I read that. "I'm sorry you felt excluded. That isn't an apology." She was sorry I felt that way, not sorry she did it. I didn't reply. I didn't see any reason to. She hadn't learned anything. Sometimes I think about how we ended up like this. We grew up with parents who doted on her. She was the star, and I was the supporting character. She always expected me to cheer her on, no matter how she acted. At her wedding, I guess she decided I wasn't worth making space for, then realized too late that she needed my help. If she'd shown an ounce of true remorse, maybe I would have felt differently. But she didn't. She just continued down the same path, focusing on how to salvage her image rather than address what she did to me. I made it clear to my parents that I'm open to a real conversation if she ever decides to acknowledge her behavior, but I won't be guilted by the family. They seemed disappointed, but they understood I wasn't going to cave. My father even admitted that he wished she'd handled things differently, yet he still held out hope we could reconcile. As time went by, I channeled my anger into building my own life. I spent more time with friends, took on new responsibilities at work, and traveled for my own enjoyment. I also found a new creative outlet. Whenever relatives brought up the wedding fiasco, I politely changed the subject. The truth was, I had no desire to rehash it. I had already taken my revenge by refusing to swoop in and save her from the disaster she created. She lost face in front of everyone, and I wasn't sorry about it. She'd betrayed me by excluding me from her big day. Now she was dealing with the fallout. I heard through the grapevine that she was trying to do damage control, telling people I'd refused to help for petty reasons. Some believed her, others pointed out that she excluded me first. I didn't bother defending myself. The facts were clear. She uninvited me, the wedding failed spectacularly, and I was conveniently unavailable. End of story. If she wanted a perfect day, she should have thought about how families work. You don't shut someone out, then beg them to fix everything when it goes wrong. I don't know if my sister and I will ever be close. Right now, I doubt it. She'd have to make a genuine effort, and I don't see that happening. Sometimes people ask if I regret anything, and I honestly say no. I booked a vacation, enjoyed myself, and let her wedding become an unforgettable train wreck. If anything, it taught me I shouldn't let family treat me like a doormat just because we share genes. I found my own peace by rejecting her attempts to whitewash the past. Maybe she'll learn a lesson, maybe she won't. That's not my responsibility. My only responsibility is to stand up for myself, and that's what I did. I don't forgive her, and I definitely won't forget. That might not be the kind of happy ending my parents want, but it's the truth. I've moved on. My sister might still be nursing her wounded ego. That's her problem. If she ever realizes how badly she messed up and decides to apologize without making excuses, I might consider listening. But until then, I'm done. She made her bed, and it's hers to lie in. As for me, I'll continue living my life, free from her drama, knowing that I refuse to let her walk all over me one more time. That's the only closure I need.